Archer Roose. Archer
Hello.
Roose. Welcome to BeerNet Radio. It's the podcast where all your dreams come true. Archer Roose, just to love it. Wine in a can. But the original Archer Roose was this kind of adventure in the early 20th century. Ride moose.
Obviously, that's why we made it our icon.
I mean, it's iconic. Love the can. Jen, why don't you introduce our guest and we'll get right to it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, today I'd like to welcome to BeerNet Radio Marian Leitner-Waldman, CEO and co-founder of 10-year-old luxury canned wine brand Archer Roose. And where beer had a terrible Q1, Archer Roose has seen 26% depletion growth so far in 2025. And part of their strategy is leveling up their distribution. And they've just partnered with Columbia Distributing in the Pac Northwest, which we'll definitely talk about today. So welcome, Marian.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited to be part of this party.
Awesome. Awesome. What's that you got in the background there? What is Archer Roose with a little garnish or?
Yeah, well, actually, one of the things that we're all about here at Archer Roose is making wine more accessible and showing you how it fits into your daily life. And one thing that we love to talk about a lot is wine-based cocktails. So this is an example of our French 75. And we have lots of really great recipes on our site and that we produce for our partners.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, let's I'll start off here. Let's talk about that good news because it seems like we never have good news to talk about. So let's talk about those brand depletion trends. Excuse me. I haven't had my Archer Roose today yet. They got to set me straight. So where is that growth coming from, right? Channels, regions, maybe new markets?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think some of the most exciting pieces of this is one actually grounded in just stronger year-over-year velocity in our existing markets, which is awesome. What we're finding in our developed or more mature markets is that we have the same velocity as beer, which is something that wine brands typically can't claim at all. But yes, we are opening up new markets, but we're also really our growth is really driven by this idea that drinking culture is evolving, and it's evolving in kind of two ways. One is, of course, how the consumer is evolving, looking for greater convenience, looking for more moderation. And our company was founded with a very simple idea, which is that we just want you to have a better glass of wine and you don't have to open up the bottle. So that message is clearly resonating, and you see that in the velocity story. But I think what gets our distributor partners so excited is that what we've also been demonstrating is if you put good wine in beer accounts, you get great growth. And it offers truly incremental revenue opportunities for our wholesaler partners. But it's also great for the bottom line of our accounts. And so what our kind of by combining the format with, and I emphasize this, good quality wine, and not just, hey, I'm going to follow this trend, but we put a lot of thought and emphasis in that, and in that story, we are able to really open up new opportunities for wine drinking. And so that means, if you're typically just a big craft beer account, you clearly care about quality ingredients and a quality story. Having quality wine you got to have, and then you can actually keep customers in your account longer. That's better for the account. Active entertainment, things on the go. One of my favorite stories is stadiums. I was at a Taylor Swift concert a couple of years ago, and I realized it was a 99% women, and there was one place that sold wine in the entire stadium. That line wrapped around the stadium. That's lost sales, right? Mm-hmm. So this is all about understanding. It's less so much like that, hey, what's hot and what's not. It's recognizing how the consumer's evolved and how we've got to meet them and work with our partners to provide solutions, because people do want to drink. It's just making sure that we're providing them what they want in the occasion where they want it.
Mm-hmm. So are you telling me that high margin and high velocity turns out to be a pretty good thing?
Yeah.
You don't see those two things together very often. So very cool.
It's honestly, I think this is I think that frankly, there's just this massive opportunity in wine because the wine consumer has been so ignored for so long. The wine industry built a culture that wine and drinking wine had to look a certain way. And what we have found time and time again is young people want to explore wine. They're interested in wine. But how they want to interact with it is different than what we were told we had to expect.
It does seem like a gatekeeping culture over there, and I think it's starting to bite them with younger people. Gatekeeping's not cool anymore. Let's make it.
No, people want to decide for themselves, and so again, this is where we find beer has always been dominant in high trafficked accounts, high velocity accounts where you hang out all day. That's where we want our products to show up. We want to be part of the experience.
And I'm curious what your mix is like too, because you mentioned stadiums and venues, and you were at our summit earlier this year and mentioned that a lot too. So can you share what your mix breaks down like on versus off premise and where you kind of do the most volume right now?
Well, first, you've got to understand that, I'm an old-fashioned lady. I was born 80 years old, okay? So I kind of went out, and my belief is building brands the old-fashioned way. So we built this brand in the on-premise. And because we knew we had two challenges. One was that we had to convince distributors that there was a good business to be had in canned wine. And the second was we had to convince consumers that canned wine was good. So we focused exclusively on the on-premise for the first 8 years of our life.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so to this day, 80% of our business is on-premise. We're a 140,000 9-liter case brand today, and 80% of that is in the on-premise.
80%. That is, I would not have guessed that because it seems like you have a lot of runway. I mean,
we have so much runway. This is what's crazy.
It's like picking money off the ground.
100%. And we're only now just launching into the off-prem. But we're doing it off of the back of this really strong foundation we've laid around brand equity, brand experience. I mean, if you are, poured in James Beard award-winning restaurant and you're coming out of a can, there's a halo effect to that. If you are on a vacation on a beach and you're being handed a can, there's a halo effect to that. So we are, we talked about gatekeepers just a minute ago. I'm trying to harness the tastemakers, right? But it's actually in those traditional beer accounts, and then using that as a parlay into saying, this is a great wine by the glass option. And on-premise loves it because it's speed to service, it's one-to-one inventory management, it's no waste, and you get to deliver a great, highly profitable product, yet you're offering an awesome quality, which means that you're going to get a second turn. And consumers love it because once you're converted to this, going home on a Tuesday night and when you want a glass of wine, and typically you would say, I'm not going to have one because I don't want to open up a bottle. Now you're opening it up, but you're not sacrificing, kind of your health goals because you can just have that one. You can just have that treat. Yeah. So we're just at the launching pad, frankly, for this. And we're really excited to kind of see more and more beer wholesalers or total wholesalers kind of waking up to this phenomenon because frankly, the amount of accounts that we're in to achieve that volume is so low. We have so much low hanging fruit, both in the on-premise side and in the retail side.
Yeah. And so you just obviously signed on with Columbia Distributing in the Pac Northwest. Why did you choose them? Let's talk a little bit more about one of the topics of the day, which is wine and spirits RTDs going with beer wholesalers. And, how many other beer wholesalers are you looking at?
Okay, well, first I got to give you guys a plug because I love that you combined the beer and the wine and spirit summit together because as somebody who goes to both, that was critical. And this deal was done at your summit.
Love to hear that.
Thank you.
Deals get done.
And maybe let all those wholesalers be warned that I will stock them at upcoming summits.
You heard it here
Um,
first.
I'm very charming, I promise, particularly after you have some Archer Roose. Don't be afraid. But anyway, yes, so kind of zooming back out and all jokes aside, I really believe that we all need to challenge ourselves in today's environment to think about two things when you enter a market. One is, what is the drinking culture of that market? And also then, what is like the account universe you need to service as a consequence of that? The Pac West, it was kind of a no-brainer that we needed to go with a beer distributor because it tends to be a more outdoorsy culture. It's more informal, it's more active. And so we needed to be at places where cans were embraced in order to truly get what that share of mind, which comes from high traffic, really being part of people's daily experience. The markets where we're successful are where we become inescapable. Like you show up at brunch and we're there. You show up at a beer garden, we're there. You show up at, Top Golf and we're there. And so that was a perfect market for us to continue to lean into. The second thing is because of that activity, it's also a C-store market. And beer distributors obviously dominate there. And while we have not truly launched into C-stores yet, that is 100% on our roadmap. Once we build that presence in the on-premise, C-stores are going to be the next step that we focus on.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
And so when we look at I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And so when we look at the country overall, we really take it by this market by market approach to make sure that we satisfy those two things. But I will say this strategy has also been phenomenally successful for us in New York. So in New York City, we've been with beer distributors from the beginning. Shout out to Union Beer. And, we'll sell 20,000 9-liter cases in Brooklyn this year.
Yeah.
So again, it's like understanding that market, understanding your core consumer, and understanding where people are spending their time and making sure we show up there.
As you make more moves into the off-premise, where have you found the brand sits best on the shelf and even the cold box even, because I'm sure some of your sparkling, you may want that cold, but maybe not some of the other. So how have you kind of navigated putting it out on off-premise
That's a great
retail?
question because I think, let's be honest here. I'm not showing up assuming that canned wine hasn't been tried in wholesalers, but what I would argue is really different about what we're doing is two things. One is that there was an early rush into canned wine that put no emphasis on brand and no emphasis on quality. And they really were just thinking, oh man, it's in a can, like seltzer's in a can, beer's in a can, this'll sell. The consumer is not dumb. They want quality. And if they want thoughtfulness, and we're seeing this in the RTDs that are doing well today, and we're seeing this in the beers that are continuing to show growth. And this is definitely true in the wine space. So one is you have to offer a product that people want to have again. That's first and foremost. But when it actually comes to activation strategy, we did learn a lot from that early rush, which was initially people put canned wine and RTDs and hard seltzers all together in the same aisle. And that was way too confusing. So what we suggest is the following. One, we have got to be directly in the wine aisle. So we are merchandised with the wine bottles. Why? Well, the easiest consumer for us to grab is the wine consumer, the person who's already showing up there. We find that when we show up in that aisle, we have 8 times higher velocity than we do when we're in the RTD or hard seltzer aisle. The second place where we want to be, and Jordan, you hit it right on the head, is in that cold box. And actually, all of our wines even our Pinot Noir, which is a red varietal, are designed to be drunk with the chill on it. So we recommend as many SKUs as we can get in the cold box. We like to do that. End caps are also important, and we also love to show up in areas of the store that are unique to our consumer. For instance, if you look at our data on GoPuff, for instance, one of the top items that is purchased with our sparkling wine, with our bubbly, is baby wipes. So
yeah,
so
that's awesome.
There, again, when wholesalers are looking for growth, it's not just how do you own more of the accounts you're already in, but also how do you capture more of that consumer? And women continue just to be a underserved, pun intended, consumer group. And so when we really understand and leverage our data and insights into how to serve them, we've got to merchandise our store accordingly so they can find us and then
So
join the party.
like a side stack in front of the baby formula
I mean, I didn't suggest that, Harry. You did.
at Target. Or,
Yeah.
just
I
throwing
feel like
out ideas.
They would have
Yeah.
done that by now if they thought it was safe.
More,
I
it's
don't know.
maybe the end cap to the baby aisles, kind of how
Yeah,
I like to
right.
suggest. So it's not like a bottle for you, a bottle for her. Right.
Although,
But you know that's true.
Oh, I
Oh,
mean, I'm a mom of two young kids,
Yeah.
so yes, I know
Yes.
that to be true.
Marian and I have personal, yes.
Yes, we
Read-
talked a lot about this at the summit.
It's definitely an occasion. So what is your core demographic?
Yeah, so our core demographic is women aged 28 to 50, which is
Okay.
actually a massive range. We get a lot of Gen Zers too, who are just kind of getting on their wine train, but like our core demo is that age group. But the interesting thing is when you look at our D2C consumer, because one of the benefits of our brand is that we are on channel, we actually are 40% of our drinkers are men as well. And so what we find is that like, in some cases, again, like I'm thinking about this just from a, typical beer account perspective. How do you keep your customers in those accounts longer? You make sure there's a good option for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. To eliminate the veto, right? Like somebody goes to
Correct.
that beer account that doesn't want to drink beer, but you've got that. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I've got one more question and then I'll hand it back over to the other guys. It seems like you guys, and as everybody should, rely on data a lot. So what sort of market research, what sort of data is most useful to you? And then, and I guess this is two questions in one. I know that Constellation took a stake in you guys a few years ago. How much do they help with the data and, anything else?
Yeah. So look, I think no, the Constellation partnership has been great. It's been a huge industry validation, particularly as we've knocked on these beer distributor doors and they've been like, what are you doing here? And we're like, look, like this is actually, we're part of the long-term strategy for the beer side of the business. But going back to your data question, this is where I think our industry needs to kind of join the 21st century. And that we really need to think about things in kind of two ways. One is looking at the big picture data, and the second is how do we place it into context? So, one of my favorite graphs that's made its way around LinkedIn and on Mintel is that if you looked at the 2008 CAGR of the alcohol industry, we're actually drinking more today than was predicted in 2008 that we would drink in 2025. Now, the problem is that we reset our models during the pandemic, which I don't know about you all, but if I had continued that pattern of behavior, I might have been lying in a ditch somewhere by now. So what we're sort of seeing is just a natural kind of correction back to that CAGR. The industry as a whole continues to be strong. As long as we continue to serve and put the right products in front of the consumer, because they're not dumb and they're very smart. And that is the other thing that we've learned today. So our data sources, to answer your question, are our own D2C channel. We work really closely with our retailer partners to get as much data as we can, from GoPuff, from Instacart, from Provi, from Proof, to really understand who's driving and what messages work. Of course, we look at Nielsen and Circana data, but the biggest thing too is like, how do we really understand the consumer? Because one thing that we're seeing across the board right now is that consumers care a ton about sustainability, they care about transparency, they care about quality, but they also don't want to be told how to live their lives. They want you to fit into their life. And so actually looking at these bigger lifestyle data sources is a big part of what guides our business. And so far, it's been the appropriate North Star for us.
How do you price it in the off-premise? What are you looking for at a retail on the shelf?
Yeah, we're $18.99 for a 4-pack on the retail shelf. So to put that into context, that's about a liter of wine or 25% more than a typical bottle of wine. We definitely want to be around that $20 price point, because also in wine, that is where all the growth is happening, is at that premium price point between $15 to $20.
Right. And this is a weird question.
I love weird questions, Sarah. Lay 'em on.
ever since the iPhone came out, there's been this rush toward what's called flat design, meaning the simplest, non 3D, flattest design on logos and labels that you can do. We're starting to see a reverse of that. And you guys maybe were on the cutting edge of that because there is nothing flat about your design. It's very, very retro. And I imagine it really sticks off the shelf compared to everybody else who's kind of still stuck in the flat design. How did you go about, you guys originally deciding on that unique label?
Yeah. Well, if you can't tell, I'm a bit of a renegade myself, and I don't like a groupthink. And so one of the things that we did, and this was back, 12 years ago now, is we went out and we asked ourselves, what brands do we love? What brands have stood the test of time? And, we looked at things like Guinness. And then we also looked at what were exciting brands that were happening in other consumer good products. And we were really influenced by like Harry's and Warby Parker and Gentleman's Jerky, and just what we saw as a certain aesthetic that screamed premium, but also was just visually interesting. And we combined that with the feedback that we got from our target consumers, which was, I can't tell you how many times I have a great glass of wine and then I can never find it again and I can't remember the name. And that's because wine had always followed this age-old convention that was like, the name plus, or the town, family name or the town. And the brand was always built off of the relationship between the geography and the variety, which in and of itself is confusing. So instead, we looked at great craft beers, we looked at great craft spirits, and again, the ones that really stood the test of time. And we decided, we were going to have a character that essentially united the world of wine, because we produce wine in, 7 different countries today. And we wanted these to be postcards from her travels. And so we wanted a logo that once you saw it, you never forgot it. And if you Google Moose Wine, we will show up. And if you can remember the name Archer Roose, great. But at the end of the day, we were building a brand, which means something distinct from geography or a variety, but a set of values: quality, transparency, sustainability, that would allow us to explore and ultimately really have the flexibility to cater to the consumer and their evolving tastes, provided that we kept that North Star.
Nobody's using cursive serif fonts anymore. I mean, I love it. It really is against convention, and that's all I'm gonna say about it.
You've touched a little bit on the evolution of canned wine, and we've seen some players kind of come and go. What does the landscape look like currently? Is it crowded at all, or is it still sort of underdeveloped?
I think it's very underdeveloped. Okay, so let's just, for a little bit of brief history lesson, around 2018, people thought, oh man, canned wine, that's going to be the next big thing. I'm just going to take bulk wine and I'm going to put it in cans and I'm going to put it everywhere. And it gave me heartburn watching it as it happened. And it proved to be, a gigantic failure. And the reason why it failed was because you actually can't take wine that was meant to be put in a bottle and just put it into a can. And the consumer is smarter than just like me to follow on. They want authentic brands today. They want brands that stand for something. So one of the things that we did differently from the get-go is that we actually partnered with the University of Cornell, and we developed SOPs and trade secrets around how to make canned wine that can be a true replacement pour, and it actually starts in the vineyard. And this is something that's been a big differentiator for us and allowed us to kind of steal market share actually from bottled wine. And today, I think because there's been a bit of a hangover from that first canned wine wave, most, I'd say, canned wines really put emphasis on the D2C channel, which was great during the pandemic, but of course has been increasingly challenging. There are a fair amount of, I would say a handful of brands that have pretty decent distribution in retail. But But again, we're the only players in the on-premise, really. And that's been, a successful avenue for us. But I really envision a world where I do think can and alternative packaged wine is going to become increasingly popular, not only for kind of all the reasons we've described already about convenience and lifestyle and moderation, but also just because it's great for accounts. There's been so much value add there, but you can't do that unless it's a quality product. So that's again where I think we'll always be the kind of industry leader. We're actually the founders of the Canned Wine Consortium, where we share our research, like very much a page from the Boston Beer Company's playbook around if we want to build and attract more people to this space, we need to make sure there's good QA and QC. And so we want to be knowledge sharers there.
Yeah. So you're kind of in like the rare instance, I guess, of where you might be excited to see a large or, a quality player come in with a line.
Absolutely, as long as they're quality.
Yeah. Okay.
Quick follow-up for me, and then a larger question. What are your margins like compared to, say, craft beer? Because your velocity is like beer, but what are the margins like?
We're in the high 40s.
Okay.
So
wow.
Sorry, wait. Are you talking about my margins or the beer distributor?
Well,
either one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. So like I would say what we offer, I'll put it to you this way. So in general, we see around 30%, 30 to 33%.
Still
But
good,
here's
yeah.
the big play. This is where I think this is the message I want to get across. You make 3.5 times the gross profit off of a case of Archer Roose as you do off of a case of craft beer.
Right. So I mean, the percentage mask. Let's talk dollars. I mean, really, you take dollars to
Let's
the
talk
bank,
dollars.
and that's still a great margin, by the way.
Yeah.
You make it's 26. You make about $26 a case of profit off of Archer Roose.
Yeah.
So
most folks are making about $6 a case, maybe.
Correct.
A lot of beer.
So you can make around 24 to $26 a case with Archer Roose.
Very cool. And then I'm sorry if I interrupted somebody, but I can't believe it's 30 minutes into the call and we haven't talked about Elizabeth Banks yet, who of course is a co-owner of this brand.
She is.
That is awesome. And I mean, you found her, right? You ideated that and you somehow roped her in. How did you do that? And how much does she drive trends for this brand? Because we've seen celebrities work and we've seen celebrities absolutely not work with better brands.
Okay, well, first of all, this is like something that is why she's such a fabulous business partner, is that she understood from the get-go that this couldn't be Elizabeth Banks's wine brand. This had to be a brand that stood on its own and that she was the amplifier. And because that's how you're going to build something that's really valuable. And the brands that fall on their face are the ones that don't have that kind of depth. The thing that I think is so cool about what we're doing is that there's a lot to offer. And she got on board because she's a great businesswoman and she saw the opportunity here to brand wine by the glass. And make no mistake, that's what we're trying to do, is we want to brand wine by the glass in this country the way that, you go up and you call for a spirit in your cocktail or, a beer for your draft. And where, she is, what she told me from the get-go was the consumer doesn't care about terroir. The consumer cares about how the wine is made, but not in the way that wine people do. They care about it in terms of they want to know that it's got no unnecessary additives, that it's got no added sugars, that it's free from artificial food coloring and things that often happen in many mass-produced wines. So she really encouraged us to talk to the consumer in language that they'd understand and translate what makes our wine good into words that they could understand. The second thing she did was, and this is why, we've been simpatico from the get-go, because I did pursue her. Again, maybe a terrifying example of why, people should be, I should be, there's controlled access at all times. Otherwise I will show up at your door and make you a fan. But she, one of the things that we knew that we wanted to do was we wanted to be a serious wine that didn't take itself seriously. And that's Elizabeth Banks in the nutshell. Like, this is a Ivy League grad who has built a big production company. She's a very successful director as well as actress and writer, has built multiple franchises, but she's not afraid to laugh at herself. And she is just so funny. And so since we are canned wine, right? We're inherently can't take ourselves too seriously. We knew that humor had to be a linchpin for how we talk to our consumers. And so she's been a driving force in helping to create content that is just different and that allows us to connect to consumers different.
I can't think of another like A-list actor that's more beloved, like universally beloved, right? Like you pick any actor or actress, you're like, there's always some haters out there, but I can't think of anybody that dislikes Elizabeth Banks. Like she's just so versatile and talented and, like you say, hilarious.
And she's just a good person. She's a good person.
I really like the one commercial where she's like dragging out that trash can full of wine bottles and they're like clinking around. And that is such a like mom thing. Like, oh, I don't want everybody to know how much I drink.
Yeah. Totally.
I definitely identify with that.
That is like a piece of physical comedy that's extremely difficult. And she did that in one take.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She's a pro.
And that, she's got a hot show on Netflix right now. Do you guys see any lift from that? Just like an awareness or?
On Amazon Prime, The Better Sister. Check it out. It is absolutely binge worthy. Best paired with a can of Archer Roose Malbec or Pinot Noir. So you two can be dark and twisty. But yeah, of course we do. It's everything she does, just like everything that we do, is all about reinforcing, one another. And this is the thing that I think wine doesn't understand, is how important it is to be part of the zeitgeist. And so we're really thrilled at her success.
I binged it last week. It's really good.
It's so good.
It's just lots of twists and turns. You don't know who's the better sister, So
totally.
Maybe you're the better sister, Harry.
Listen, I could be. I give it 5 out of 5 Archer Rooses.
Oh,
damn!
Nice.
Yeah.
High praise.
High praise.
Wow.
Would you guys ever do canned spirits? Is that just eye off the ball too much?
Well, I guess this is where like I feel really strongly that like we're building a brand that stands for something specific in wine. Now, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't do a wine-based cocktail. But I do think that we need to be wine forward. And that's just because like I don't feel like we've earned the credibility to be distillers. So to me, that would be a separate brand, because also wine drinkers are a particular breed, and you're reaching for a wine because you don't want to necessarily drink spirits in that moment. So for me, this is about how do we build a relationship with our consumer? We can follow them across occasions and understand if spirit-based RTDs is something that she would like us to get involved in, great. But like, we've got to figure out a new way to do that. It wouldn't be under the Archer Roose brand, but a wine-based cocktail. We already kind of do that informally. So I'll definitely leave the door open for you there.
Yeah. And then continuing on with the would you ever, as you kind of put a more emphasis on convenience, are you thinking about any different package sizes, or does that not really fit with, I don't think you might want to do like a 24 ounce of Archer Roose, but we'll see.
Magnum?
We think a lot. Well, we think a lot about channel and format size. So for instance, like we already kind of do things specifically. So like we do these 4-packs for off premise. We do loose cases for the travel channel and stadiums. We do keg wines as well. And our kegs actually run off the same lines as beer lines. They're one-way disposable kegs that use the American Sankey. So those are great for kind of high volume. We're currently looking at and expanding like what is the right size of the can in kind of different permutations. But one thing that I do feel strongly about is like, as we kind of, one of the big mistakes, I think, in the first wave of canned wine was people put wine into like, a beer can, like a 375, it was 355 beer can. And people drank those thinking that that was like a single serve, but that's half a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Like, and honestly, like I might drink half a bottle to a bottle of wine by myself, but I need to know that that's happening. I don't want to be surprised. So I think one of the big insights too about our consumer is just that in order to continue to like own her trust, like we have to give her a modicum of control. So figuring out those right pack sizes is critical. And I don't think we're 100% ready to say, this is how we're going to approach each channel, because we're still understanding how she interacts with wine in retail, whether that be grocery versus C-store. Sorry for the boring answer.
No, it's interesting, but does she, meaning the consumer, normally drink it out of the can or pour it into a glass?
If she's drinking at home or at a restaurant, she pours it into a glass. Like our wine tastes best out of a glass, but on the go, when she's drinking it by around a fire or at, Summer Stage in Central Park in New York City, she's drinking it out of a can. So again, it is understanding that occasion and making sure that we are showing up for her in the way that she wants us to be.
I know that Jen likes to have the last question.
Well, would you guys, since Jordan asked, and since we're on the topic, would you consider having a Magnum can for the holidays? Because I would consider drinking it.
Yeah, we totally would. I also have always had heart for do you remember those old school small Heineken kegs you used to be able to buy?
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually kind of love a wooden barrel, holiday release for Archer Roose, because I know that in my family, we're always hosting. And so just having something that is elegant, that could just kind of sit in the middle of the countertop and then have just be constant refills or sneaky refills. That sounds perfect.
And festive. Totally.
Because you always, just like with the beer, you're always trying to balance. You want to make sure that it stays cold or it stays the temperature that you want it to stay. But so I would say, though, that nothing is off the table.
Archer Roose, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. And I remember back, I think at our summit, probably 2017 or 18, I remember it was all about canned wine. There a lot of people were trying to do it. And like you said, not many have succeeded. So,
the thing that I would just add there is I know that, and I encounter this every day. The interesting thing is that while wholesalers tried to do canned wine before, less than 16% of the American population has ever tried a canned wine today. I'm going to say that again. Less than 16% of the population has ever tried canned wine, and less than 20% even knows that canned wine exists. Wow. So the good news is that first wave, it definitely affected the industry, but it didn't actually ruin the opportunity for the consumer. And what we're seeing time and time again, and just look at the success of our brand, has been that when we put it in front of people, they're like, where have you been my whole life? This is super exciting. Suddenly, again, here's a great example, Logan Steakhouse. I wouldn't, Old Chicago Steakhouse. I'm sorry, my child coming in here.
Girl, mine are upstairs, don't worry.
Yeah. So Old Chicago, we are now the number one selling wine SKU at Old Chicago. We're the only canned on their menu. Okay, we have one SKU. Their previous best-selling SKU was 17% of sales. We're 20% of their sales. So not only did we leapfrog the other bottles of wine, we actually are outselling the previous, other top seller that was in a bottle. So we know that this format works, and we know that people are interested. What failed before was they didn't have great shelf life and they didn't have great quality. So what I'm here to tell you today is we've solved both of those things. Now it's just about, are we willing to link arms as an industry and say, let's build this category in the right way so that we can build something that will be a truly sustainable and incremental source of revenue, that will join hard seltzer and lagers and all IPAs and all of these other kind of big segments that have pushed the industry forward. It's now, I think, is the time for canned wine.
Well, I mean, we're all, I think everybody on this call is old enough to remember when it was sacrilege to even talk about craft beer being sold in a can. And it wasn't that long ago. And now, what, 80% of it sold in a can? So
Right.
the consumer seems to be ready for it. And it's not, nobody views it as a quality. It's a convenience thing. So,
and if you read Jim Cook's book, he'll also say, like, the beginning of the craft beer movement, there was a good 10 years of stops and starts really getting it off the ground. In fact, that's why they started sharing their quality, their research, to basically make sure that they could solve this problem and then get distributors really behind it. So again, that's what we're trying to do. And we're so grateful on the other canned wine brands that have signed on to this. And we're excited to be part of the revolution.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Mary, for being on this podcast on BeerNet Radio. And we hope to have you back
I'd love that.
at an appropriate time and see how things are going over there. But it sounds like they're going pretty good. So, all right, guys. Well, listen, remember that the Distributor Productivity live stream is happening later this month. Go to beernet.com if you want to make your distributorship more efficient and effective. I don't know why you wouldn't. It's a half-day live stream. It's cheap, and if you don't get 10 times back what you paid for the ticket, then I'll eat my underwear on camera. So, all right, guys, we'll see you next week on BeerNet Radio. Take care.
Cheers.